One. What's up, everyone? Hey, Myson Jones here with the Basketball Trainer Mastermind. You guys already know the name of the group, but this is a series that I really am interested in starting. It's called Finance Friday, and I have a recent friend. And Seth, I really would like for you to just tell your side of the story, how we met, because I believe this is like our third or fourth interaction or seeing each other face to face.
Yeah, something like that.
But man, when you know somebody and you align with them really well, it's interesting how fast you can move and build rapport. Honestly, so if you can to lead this off with Finance Friday, can you tell everyone who's watching this now or later your background in basketball and in personal finance, and we can go from there.
Yeah, man. Mice, I appreciate you having this on. Like the conversation and us meeting has been pretty different. It's been fast, like you said, and we've only met, in person a few times, but I feel like I've known you for years. So first, I do appreciate you having me on, and yeah, my background in basketball, I guess, is where kind of how we hit it off. Unlike you, I don't have college experience, but I will say the love of the game started a long time ago. So like most people, rec league, having a ball in my hands at all times, sleeping with it, like that was my dream to play college basketball. It didn't happen. I had a few lower offers, like a lot of people say, but the love of the game, being a student of the game, definitely took me. All of my interests were circled around basketball. And so, that love of the game, and you can't really explain it, but it did take me into college. I majored in sport management at Liberty University. So I did take that dream kind of into the intention of being a college basketball coach. I was looking at going the GA route since I didn't play, or maybe be a manager or something. But, while I was in college, I met a girl, which is pretty typical. But outside of that, my studies started getting really interested in finance. In high school, I'd heard about Dave Ramsey, but I didn't really have any money to invest or pay off any debt because I didn't have any personal debt. But once you get to college, like a lot of people, you do rack up some debt. And so I didn't rack up a crazy amount. So mine was very minimal compared, and Lord blessed me with scholarships and stuff. So, just started really honing in on it. I don't come from a family where we had a ton of money or a ton of big money decisions. But money management was just kind of, it comes in and we pay what we have, and there was no really long-term plan. But I will say just being stewards of our money is something that I grew up with. And so I follow that passion, and it's kind of led me to where I am today.
I like that. That's solid. So for you, and we talked yesterday about coaches and your passion for helping specifically with finances, because it gets tough, especially for not any coach. And you made a good point. We're trainers here and we run our own business, but we still have teams. We have trainees. And when you get to college and the travel, and especially AAU, man, thinking about AAU and summer basketball, where a lot of guys and girls don't understand the numbers. They don't understand the hidden fees, the extra costs for traveling, and making sacrifices for players who probably don't have the means to be on the team or for transportation. Why are you so passionate about helping trainers and coaches out with their financials?
And I think it starts off with, like I was saying, with the passion. I share that passion with coaches, with trainers, about, giving back to the game, helping develop young talent, working on a skill set. And I think with that same passion comes the amount of time that goes into actually doing that. So although I'm not playing basketball now and I'm not a trainer myself now, I do understand the amount of time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears that go into it. So with that being said, I know that college coaches and trainers, especially when you're in season or whenever your busy season is, whether it's, preseason for trainers is usually big as kids ramp up to maybe make their team, or maybe there's a college recruit that's really wanting to hone in on his game and get prepared for his senior season. Through those busy seasons, it's, as I've heard you say before, it's all gas, no brakes. So it's to think and sit back and talk about how's my profit and loss doing this year? Where's my money going? There's a number of things that need to be taken care of. And so that's really what I specialize in doing in my day job. And so with that being said, sharing those passions and knowing all those decisions that come up, I know exactly what it's going to look like, because if you're whether you're on the sideline coaching, you're in a crunch time, you're in a timeout, you're writing up the play. If they hit this play, you guys are going to win the game. Or if you're training, you're in the midst of, a very hard training session, finances don't matter. but I'm going to be the one that's going to be stressing about your finances so that you can do your job. So it's just so many decisions. I feel like everyone has financial responsibilities, but I feel like the job of a coach and a trainer is something that a lot of people don't understand until they do it, or unless they just have a passion for it. And so I don't know. I think that's where it comes from.
Where do you start with the personal finances? Are you like, hey, get a budget, pay off all your debt? I mean, what do you usually suggest with that for coaches, for trainers?
Yeah, well, it really depends on where you're at. So, and since this is a trainer group, as trainers, it's all about gym time. It's about having kids coming in and out of the doors. Camps are really big. So, I mean, to start off with, I would say the best is probably a budget. And I know that may sound super simple, and a lot of people hopefully already have a budget. But just because you're making money doesn't mean that that's going to be a long-term thing for you unless you stick to it. Especially as you go to scale, it's a hustle and a grind for a trainer to get in the gym, run around with kids, train them, and no matter what service you have, whether you add on like film training or you add on like I'll drive to your house kind of thing, it's a grind. But when you sit back and think about it, I've heard you talk about it many times on the podcast. I don't think enough emphasis is put on the business side of it. I think I've even seen you say, basketball training is 40% basketball, 60% business, and so that's kind of what I specialize in. I would say to start with the budget, because money in and money out is going to make or break any business, much less a basketball training business where it does come in waves. So I think that's most important.
So when we technically, at least we all start out as solopreneurs, where we're doing this thing by ourselves. How do you suggest that budget look? Is it a combination of personal expenses and the business expenses in one? Do you suggest separating those two out? What does that look like in an Excel sheet or in general?
Yeah, it really depends on how you go to file your taxes. And up front, I'm not a CPA. Now I do help people with their taxes, and I don't prep tax prep or anything, but it really depends on how you pay your taxes. So if you're just a solopreneur, as you said, I know in the finance world that's sole proprietorship or whatever it is, however you file. It's really important that you understand where your income bracket is at. You understand capital gains and losses. You understand business taxes, because you're running your own thing doesn't mean you're just going to pay one income tax as if you were a W-2 employee. Business owners typically have a couple extra taxes, especially small business owners, that they may have to pay. I would say, especially as you're starting out, if you want it to be a long-term thing, you should not be worried about how much money you're personally taking home. I would shoot to put as much money back into the business as possible. That's that sweat equity, but it's also it's that capital. Putting that away for a little bit, just because who knows? Maybe there's some trainer out there that he's making six figures in his first year and he's netting six figures. That doesn't mean it's going to be long term. I mean, the nature of basketball training is spotty, especially if the area you live in changes, or if you happen to move and you got to start over. I would put back as much at the beginning.
Or rent increases 60%.
Yeah, and plus, and that's another thing too. I mean, the time and the economy that we're at now, interest rates are really low, but that usually coincides with property values going up. So as value goes up, so does the rent typically. So unless you're in Manhattan right now, your rent is probably the same, if not going up. So
that's golden, man. That is golden. And so what I'm hearing you say is pay yourself as little as you possibly can and invest the rest back into the business.
For sure. Yeah, I would say a little more than a living wage, but I have a couple of good friends that have started businesses, and they're in year 5, 6, 7, and I know how much they're making, and they're making enough to be living comfortably, but they want it to be long term. And so just pay yourself for your needs, and let's do away with some of the wants. It's really, do you want more things, or do you want your business to succeed? I think that's a good question to ask yourself.
I like it. I think Susie Orman said this, man. She said, live below your means, but within your needs. So like, that just resonates with me. And it sounds like you're saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, for sure.
When it comes to, and you mentioned Dave Ramsey, you mentioned debt as well. How does how does that work? Because I know a lot of trainers want their own gym. What we really want is one guy in the group, a guy named Sam Franklin, articulated really well. He said what we really want is our own space to always operate out of when we want to. And at times it looks like a lease. But with us having our own gym, that screams debt to me. Court costs, goals, paint, floors, all that stuff. How do you reconcile that with the personal finances, the good debt, Robert Kiyosaki type of mindset with, hey, all debt's bad, Dave Ramsey type of
For sure.
philosophy?
I would say to merge the two because, yeah, I mean, there's two schools of thought. And, Dave Ramsey is really big on let's have absolutely zero debt. The paid off mortgage is the goal. So obviously that is the goal, but that doesn't mean everyone can, feasibly, pay down their mortgage or pay down $1 million loan on a new gym facility. So you do have to pick and choose what, you believe in, but also what works. And so I do agree a lot with Rich Dad, Poor Dad as well, and on many things that he says. And so I don't know. I mean, debt in a way makes the world go round. And so the way I look at it, if you're running in your personal life, you should seek to have as little to no consumer debt as possible. Make extra mortgage payments if you can. That kind of stuff is important. For a business, in a way, if you look at debt, whether it's a commercial loan on a building or you're buying a book of business, I don't know how that would work in basketball training, but say maybe there's like a contract you have with a couple of schools or a couple of organizations where you're the sole trainer and you want to buy it from another trainer. I don't know what that looks like. But yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily consumer debt. If you have cash flow coming in from your gym or not your gym, from your business, that's going to pay for the gym, and you think that that's sustainable for the length of the loan, obviously sit down with a financial planner or your CPA or whoever you make sure to financial decisions and weigh that out. But I think that not all debt is bad debt if you use it properly. Obviously, don't get in over your head. But long-term goal, especially if you want to make it a sustainable business and have a team of people that are training with you, and you want to control the hours and you don't want to have to rent court time and drive across town, a couple days a week, obviously that's a good goal to have. And so I think it's a really good conversation and a really good goal to shoot for. So again, that goes right back to the budget. If that's your long-term goal and you want to own a gym, then really right now spending money should be the last thing you want to do. You should just eat, show up, do your job, and just push. So I think it's important to really weigh out the differences in your personal debt and in your business debt. That's just my personal opinion on it.
What do you think are some of the most common inefficiencies and wasteful spending habits of people in general? I can imagine for trainers, with eating out is the first thing that comes to mind because you're always on the road. You know me, I'm driving a lot. But what have you seen as some wasteful habits?
Yeah, I mean, I would say personal finances has got to be eating out. I mean, we're in a culture that's always go. And yeah, I feel like most of the times that we've talked, you've either been in the car or you just got out of the car, you're walking in the gym. I understand that's the nature of the business. You've got to go around, you've got to be flexible. So yeah, food is probably one that's going to be an embellishment. It's personal. I don't really have this, it's not a deficiency, but I don't really have the issue with spending money on clothes. But I do know that a lot of the high end people who want to be influencers on Instagram or Facebook, they want to look good. And so, a lot of times you're probably paying for you would probably be paying for your things out of your business account, but it doesn't really matter what Nikes you're wearing, man. It really doesn't matter as long as you can get in there and train. Like, those fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth graders, they may say, man, your shoes are really cool, but that's not turning the lights on. That's not renting your court space. So I would say, again, it goes back to that budgeting. I would say, I don't know, just buying the consumer products. Maybe you have access to a gun, the shooting gun, and maybe it's a little older and it's a little rickety and maybe you want a new one. If it's feasible, sure, get it. But if the facility has one, but it's not maybe the A one that you want, maybe it's the B or the C, make it work, man. Make it work. Rebound for the kid if you don't have a gun. It's little things like that It's just leveling up in your business as you go to scale and you make things look a little more, top shelf, high class, whatever you want to call it. Just make sure you're ready and prepared to make that purchase. But yeah, I would say the big one, and although food seems minimal, if you're eating out every single day, it does rack its way up. So I would suggest looking into a way of maybe working with your CPA and seeing how that works, maybe through the business. But yeah, I would put myself last as the business owner. I would put myself last, eat so that you can survive, and then just do your job. And then after everything else is taken care of. So whatever falls under that umbrella, I think is probably my opinion.
That's good insight, because this really is, as well as a lot of industries, it's a status-driven industry. The parent wants their kid to get more playing time. The kid wants to start on his team. The shoes, the clothes. The trainer wants to have the most followers. And with all that status, you never really know. It's not like the real basketball game where you can see the score. You can see the scoreboard and understand who's ahead. But in this game, you really can't. Like, somebody's profit and loss statement or their balance sheet and their cash flow statement, those things are hidden, unfortunately. So you never know where somebody really, really stands. So I like this wisdom that you're sharing right now.
Well, I would say too, that's a compare. Sorry to cut you off. That's the comparison game that I feel like it's a cancer. Really, it is really sports, especially when you look at the top level. NBA is all about looking good. It's about like the coolest car you can buy, signing the biggest contract. I think Giannis just signed a $228 million contract, supermax deal. That's great, man. That's great for him. But honestly, if you're happy in your life and you're running your business and you're doing what you were put on earth to do, it doesn't really matter, man. It doesn't really matter. That comparison game's dangerous.
I agree. So when it comes to debt, and I realized for me, like, it's literally, I was paying myself, like, oh, I'm not really paying myself. I'm paying myself. And when I paid it off, it felt the best feeling in the world. I didn't do the David Ramsey debt screen, but paying it off, I realized I'm literally paying myself just to get back to zero. Mm-hmm. And it stunk, honestly. For you, what do you advise when it comes to that? If anyone listening has debt right now, do you advise them to go with the snowball effect or a strategy with the lowest interest rate first, or the highest interest rate because it will cost the most money over the next few months? Or what's your strategy when paying that debt off?
Yeah. So just to keep it simple, I would say, the typical types of debt we have are credit cards, maybe a car loan. Maybe there's a personal loan out for something. You mentioned it, but the school of thought is, the debt that has the lowest interest rate or the smallest debt. So maybe you got a $500 debt on a credit card, but maybe you've got a $5,000 loan on your car. Common sense says, let's go ahead and just knock out the $500 one so that we can just throw everything into one. So that's that debt snowball. But if you're tasked with having, maybe you got a $5,000 loan on your car and a $5,000 personal loan, you obviously want to pay both of them, at least what they're asking you to pay. But I would take the one that has the lowest interest rate. Just keep it simple, man. The life of a trainer is not, it's not idle. It's always moving. And so things like debt payments and this got to be paid on the 1st, or this has to be paid on the 15th. Those things are easily forgotten, especially if they're not on auto pay. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on it.
There's a shelf life. Well, I hear that being said, and I imagine there's a shelf life to training. I know a few guys who are 60, 65, maybe around training kids and coaching and still active, which is great. What do you advise, or what can you advise when it comes to thought process around retirement and setting something aside in case somebody does want to hang up the shoes, the sneakers?
Sure. Well, I think it goes without saying. Everyone, whether you're a trainer or you work a day job 9 to 5, I don't know that there's a set number. Once you get comfortable and your bills are paid, then maybe you can hit it. But 15% of your pay is typically what I would suggest to someone in an ideal world. But if you're putting back something every month, just remember, maybe, Lord willing, no injuries, but trainers are moving too. So the likelihood of you getting injured or rolling your ankle or something, maybe you can't show up to that camp, or maybe God forbid, but you tear your Achilles or something like that. And then you're out for a year. What are you going to do? And so, yeah, you got to put money back. It's got to be for the short term, but also the long term. The short term may be in the method of insurance, but long-term retirement is It's something that our generation it's a foreign word, man. It's crazy to me how many kids know. I say kids, meaning, millennials. I'm a millennial myself. It's crazy how many people our age know that they need to save for retirement, but aren't actively doing it. Um, it's a very simple, it's just a very simple like way to live. Just live below your means and put something back. If that something means you're just putting $50 away a month, that's better than nothing, because over time, whether you invest it or whether it just sits in a bank account, it's going to be there whenever you need it. And so I don't know, man, it blows my mind how many people don't plan for retirement, especially someone who's in an active career. Trainers, coaches, a lot of times, unless they're, an anomaly like the Coach K's and the Roy Williams and the Boeheims that are coaching well into their 60s, 70s, likelihood of you coaching super long term, it's a stressful job, and trainers, it's super active too. So whether you train personally and you run a business like that, or maybe you train for an NBA or a college team or whatever, just remember it's not forever. So it's that long-term vision. You've got to keep that in the back of your mind at all times.
Do you have any favorite resources, articles, or blogs or anything that you like to check out to review that's helped you out or that you recommend to others?
For retirement?
In general, for retirement or just finances in general.
Well, I would say something that's super practical. I always like being practical, so that maybe maybe you don't hear a word I say, but maybe I can give you something to go look at afterwards. Dave Ramsey's app, Mint, super simplistic. It's a budgeting app. You can put in how much you make every month, and it gives you a ton of categories to, you can link it to your credit card. So whenever you swipe, it automatically goes to a category, keeps you in line. That's really important. There's a ton of resources online though, concerning finance. But I think the two that we've talked about, Dave Ramsey, his last name's Kawasaki, right?
Yeah, Robert Kiyosaki.
Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Those type of guys are super, super practical in what they say. If you're looking for something material, physical, email list, email me after this and I'll send you something. Those are the two that come to mind at first, but also just get your budget in line first before you start talking about investing or retirement. Just shoot me an email. I'd be happy to dig up something for you.
What is the email? I'll type it in the comments right now if that's okay.
Yeah, it's just Seth, so SETH @signaturewealth.com.
Got it. And what is that process like for you? I've noticed with me and budgeting, like you have a set budget. And Mint, I've used Mint before. I haven't used it recently. I have like a basic Excel sheet, but I have the budget, and then I have QuickBooks on the business side, and I'm noticing that I have to retroactively, because the revenue can be up and down at times. Depends. Like you can kill it one month, the next month you're down a certain percentage. How does that work? Or how do you suggest that work with the budgeting if someone has just a basic Excel sheet?
Sure.
What does that look like, budgeting?
Yeah, I would say especially for trainers, because the nature of the job is up and down. You have, busy and slow seasons. Go back and look at what your expenses are. See what, maybe you only have $1,000 worth of expenses per month. And maybe you've got, in the busy seasons, you've got, ideally $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 coming in every month. Maybe you don't need all that money. Maybe you just budget on what you need and then give yourself some wiggle room, whether that's $500, $1,000, $2,000, and just start there. Especially on the personal side, when you're mixing personal and business, don't overpay yourself. And that's a good practical method. So anything extra, you can either dump that back in the business, or you can put it away for retirement, or get something that you want or need. So I would start there. I wouldn't overcomplicate it, because in the busy seasons, it's really easy to be like, oh man, I just made X number of dollars this month. It's really easy. I'm just going to eat out every day. But then in the slow times, when maybe you don't have a camp for a month, make sure your bills are paid first, and then give yourself some wiggle room. Anything extra, let's put it away.
Yep, that's like literally my first year. Like the summer, like, oh my goodness, I'm killing it. And then November, December, the slower months hit, and then you're just panicking, stressed out, not knowing what to do.
Yeah. You got to shop cheap then.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, what else comes to mind for you when it comes to your thought and desire to help coaches, trainers with their finances? Do you have any other things that ring true that come to mind that would be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I think something that you've talked about too that I think really resonated and, encouraged me to continue pursuing mostly just like a friendship with you is just how you are passionate about the business side. I don't think that people talk about it enough, especially those solopreneurs. My wife is a personal trainer. She's not a basketball trainer, but before we had our kids, she was a personal trainer. She was herself. So things like, paying your taxes quarterly. That's a big thing that I feel like a lot of people getting into entrepreneurship, they hear Gary Vee yelling like, man, get after it. And they hear Grant Cardone, I'm going to buy this $1 million building right now. You hear all that, and that's great if you can afford it. But the little things like paying your taxes, that stuff gets away from you real quick. And that's how you get in trouble. So I'd say the first practical tip, if you are a 1099 or if you're just a sole proprietorship, pay your taxes quarterly. Don't forget it. Find a good CPA. If you don't know one, call me. I have a couple that I know really well, or you can use QuickBooks, TurboTax, whatever it is you use to file your taxes. That's super practical. But also, that putting money back, I can't stress it enough because again, like, sickness, maybe you're single now, but then you get married. If your wife or husband is like mine, maybe there's a stay-at-home dad. That's fine. My wife's a stay-at-home mom now. We've got 2 kids. So she's not working right now. She does some online stuff, but it's important to put money back for seasons like that, because when you do, once that big bill or once that hardship comes and your pay, one of the jobs is taken away, you have it. So, I mean, just take care of your stuff up front. And I feel like that's where my job comes into play because I know the nature of the job. It's hard. You're one of the better ones I've worked with, but it's hard typically to get people who are involved in sports on the phone or on the email or enough to slow down. And I think that does them well in sports because they've got all that energy, and that's great. But every now and then you got to make sure, hey, where's everything at? Let's come in together, make sure we're in a good spot financially, and then we can go out and do what we want to do, which is train.
And that's really interesting that you say that, because I've battled with the investing back into the business. So it's like, yeah, you can save all this money and pad it up for, I've heard someone say, save for a rainy day on the hospital bed, right? You know how much healthcare can cost.
Right.
But knowing what to invest back into the business, and you name some influencers there, like I really enjoy listening to Gary Vee. And unless you listen to someone like that, really detailed and in depth, you hear the loud polar statements. Like he said, I think one time he said, multiple times, he thinks it's content and creating content and always posting on social media is more important than balancing your checkbook. And it's like, for what you're saying, with taxes, that's important, because the IRS definitely will contact you. They definitely will ask for their money, whether it's 2, 3, 4, or 20 years down the road. But for you,
For sure,
saving that money for when there's one income into the house or when there's an increase in rent, I mean, what are your thoughts towards balancing that between investing into the business and just saving that up for a rainy day?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it all goes back again. I hate to be a broken record, but if your budget is on point, you know your profit and loss, even if it's at a loss, if you know it, then you know where to start. And then I would say, to take Gary Vee, he is first to the market. Let's put as much content out as we can, post every day. Those are all great things. And if you can, work that into your personal life and your daily life and make it a habit, then it just becomes second nature. Then you have to post. It's just like X number of clock, I have to post on social media, and then it's done for the day. It just becomes a line item. I would say it's something practical that you can put back into your business if you're making enough and you're making excess. I feel like genuine, legitimate marketing is something that we're losing touch of. I know in the financial services, when and maybe maybe it's my opinion, but I know a lot of people when they think about a financial planner or a financial advisor, it's either a super cheesy sales guy or it's a really boring old guy that all he does is just sit on his computer or write down numbers all day. Now, there's truth to some of that, but I would say I know in my industry, marketing is basically non-existent. So I think that's where that message comes from about the misnomers of my career. So I would say there's probably some misnomers about basketball trainers. Maybe people think basketball trainers, they just want to wear cool shoes. They want to wear flashy clothes. They want to just be out there and train as many people as possible. They're going to upcharge these kids X number of dollars. And man, I would never pay that for my kid to go do that. But when you break it down, it really makes sense, but you just don't know it. So I would say genuine marketing. I don't know how much the average trainer spends on marketing, but marketing is more than just, you got to start somewhere. So I'm not downing social media, but if you get to a point where you can afford it, I would look into hiring a marketing manager, someone who actually manages it for you. That takes time away from the busy schedule to where you can run your business. But also you're going to get someone whose full-time attention is put on marketing, especially when you're running a business before you super blow up, like all trainers, I want them to. You got to have those boots on the ground. You got to have those grassroots efforts. When people think basketball trainer, they need to think you, and, make your sphere super tight. Maybe it's even like a neighborhood. There's this neighborhood where there's, for whatever reason, a lot of kids play basketball in this neighborhood. Maybe you become I know that there was growing up, the Furman coach now, his name is Bob Ritchie. He grew up, went to my high school. Every summer, it was like I had to do it. I had to go to his camp. It was like a non-negotiable. My mom just knew every summer I went to his team camp, I went to his individual camp, and it was just, you need to become that as a trainer in your area. So I would say putting money back into genuine marketing. Make sure everything on Facebook is covered. Make sure everything on Instagram or Twitter, whatever is the best avenue for you, is covered. But then actually getting that boots on the ground marketing. I know that mailers and postcards seem super cheesy. Maybe putting, a poster up every now and then, it seems super cheesy. But if one person responds to it, in my mind, it's worth it. So genuine marketing, put money into marketing. I don't know. I think it's important.
Well, I'm smiling because I literally, before we got on the call, I was looking at advertising numbers. And you're right, because the trainers that I know that are on the biggest level, they have a marketing manager and or they spent money on client acquisition through Facebook ads or Instagram ads. And after a certain point, it's like, okay, you can't cut your expenses. You can't cut your way to riches through cutting expenses, I've heard.
Right.
And at some point, you have to invest in growth. And for me, I'm looking at, on Tuesday, we have a call here in the chat for going over Facebook ads and how to calculate the cost to acquire a lead and what you can afford to spend, and all those numbers and easy ways to get more clients there. And for me, it's like, it really is a numbers game to see what you can afford, one, with your budget. But at the same time, if you have a strategy that gives you $2 for every $1 you put into it, then why would we stop? Why would we have a budget at all when we can blow the business up? So that's literally what I've been spending most of my time on. So I'm interested that you say that. There's also a golden nugget you said there too. Be the coach and provide the experience you look forward to attending as a kid. And for me, it was Wake Forest. I loved going to the Wake Forest camps. My grandmother stayed for it Dave Odom, man. And then I think Skip Prosser was after Dave Odom, and then the other slew of coaches. But I wanted to go there every year, and it was a yearly event. We saved up for it the entire year to go there for a 5-day experience. So it takes branding, though, to get to that. And mixing branding and, like you said, the postcards, which I still think are cheesy, but people love them. They actually do it. The branding versus the sales of, I need to acquire clients and actually see an ROI there. It's been interesting balancing those two to make sure it makes sense for the business.
For sure. And I think too, and this goes for most industries, unless you're, a dialing for dollars and you have to sell something right now on the phone. Most industries, especially for trainers, you're building up a clientele. So especially if you get a kid who's, going into middle school or maybe even a little younger, ideally you want to train that kid every year until he graduates high school. I mean, that's just business. That just makes sense. And so I think that the grassroots involvement, becoming a staple in the community, that's more important than anything else in my mind. It's more important than, it is good every now and then to get that top talent, and, get a well-known person in the community, whether it is a college coach in the area or, a former athlete in the area or a 5-star recruit. Those things are important, but I would say, there is a way bigger pool of kids out there that live in the community that, might not ever, maybe you have Coach K show up to one of your clinics. That's probably going to be that. You would probably lose your freaking mind if he did that. And sure, a lot of people are going to come, but there's probably a lot of kids in Greenville that know nothing about Coach K, and it's not really going to matter. So there's markets, you got to take a little bit of each market. So yeah, I mean, that's important. Marketing's important. I think that marketing right now we think is just, I'm going to post on social media and I'm done. But marketing is so much more than that. I'm actually looking into some marketing stuff for my personal, my personal business as well now. So it's important.
Yeah, man. And we talked about this yesterday. How I'm training the number, and the trainers listening to this may have a different experience. But for me, even training the number one player in the state here, 5-star athlete, really talented. He is. I love training him. Challenges me, but in terms of profitability and revenue, one, he's scholarship, of course, but I don't see others coming to train with me with us because of him.
Yep.
So there are different pockets there that who may not have heard of Coach K. They just want to get better in basketball,
Right.
and those are like the target clients, or at least one heavy segment for our training business. But I do like the idea of what you're saying, though, the branding piece and making sure that you do have all those impressions, but also the advertising where, hey, we put $1 in here. How many leads do we get from this? Is this converting?
Yep.
And making sure that those dollars aren't wasted. That's where I am right now, and finding, again, it goes back to the main word, honestly, man, the budget.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's important to look into, if you can afford it, to hire someone, because everything you just mentioned would be handled by a marketing manager and you're still basketball training. So like, it's so important. It's so important.
And there's another budget here that somebody introduced to me, and I've never really thought about it, but there's a marketing budget, there's a financial budget, personal budget. There's also a time budget too. You know what I mean? Time budget meaning, for you, like you said, dollar for dollars. When I was in corporate, and I can remember my script right now. I was cold calling for an hour, being efficient on the phones. But the
Yeah.
time budget of, we really only work 5 or 6 hours out of the day. It's a part-time job that still has full-time expenses, it feels.
100%. Yeah. I think that's life. You think about, anyone who's been successful, there's probably an aspect of maybe this person isn't accessible. Just to use the example I just used, and maybe it is an extreme example, like Coach K. Right now, I know that I can't pick up a phone and directly call Coach K, and that's because he's successful. That means his time is worth a lot of money, or it's worth a lot of something. So I would say, especially as a business owner, your time is worth something, because if you're spending time, in your downtime, you've got 3 or 4 sessions in the evening, and it's going to make you X number of dollars, and that's great. If you're playing Xbox all morning, or if you're just sitting at home eating and watching TV, you're not going to be able to do that forever. Maybe every now and then you need to, de-stress and whatever, and that's great. And I'm not hating on Xbox, but I'm just saying the opportunity cost and the value of your time is something that it's not something we can put a metric on, and so it's often forgotten. I would say time is the older I get, the more important I feel like my time is, and that's stretched between family and work and free time. Be okay to say no sometimes. And I know, we want to say yes, yes, yes. I know I'm trying to get more clients in my industry, and you're trying to get more, trainees, but be okay to say no if it doesn't fit in the system that works for you now. So yeah, I mean, time is basically the only thing you've got starting out. And so what you do with that time, it makes you successful or not.
Seth, I am interested in doing this either weekly, bi-weekly, whatever works best for your schedule, because I think, especially when guys, and again, I didn't announce this or promote this at all in the group, and I'm sure people will be interested once they listen in on it. Would this be something you're interested in doing bi-weekly, weekly, and talking on Finance Fridays?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is a great platform. I think it's something that it's an industry that I don't think is talked about a lot. When you think basketball trainer, as someone who loves the game, I don't even really know how many are out there, even in my area. So I think that, just that passion for basketball is going to keep me coming back. And the more I can talk about basketball and my job at the same time, that's a good day for me. So yeah, absolutely.
Got it. And I sent your email in the comment thread. I put it there. So if you want to go in the comment section, if you have time, you're welcome to do that. But hopefully some trainers got some value from this, man. And I really do appreciate your time.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. No pressure. Appreciate your time. And yeah, I had a lot of fun.